What is it about ancient Egypt that fascinates you? Despite the fact that researchers have been digging around this fascinating country for centuries, there are still a lot of things we don't know. Ahead, we're going to share some pretty amazing and incredible facts that most people don't know or have been totally wrong about. As always, before we head off, if you could click those subscribe and notification buttons, that would be great. It also ensures you're always at the front of the line for all our video releases. Those pyramids. Well, it's time to burst another Hollywood-created myth. It turns out that those amazing pyramids in Egypt weren't actually built by slaves. While Hollywood had us believing that each stone was put in place by wretched slaves who faced non-stop whipping, the truth is a bit different. You see, researchers are now pretty sure that the hundreds of thousands of people who were involved in the construction of the pyramids were free Egyptians. Furthermore, many of these laborers were actually hired on because of their skills needed to build such incredible structures. That's a lot different than the portrayal in Cecil B. DeMille's epic, The Ten Commandments. Archaeologists came to this conclusion after finding evidence that suggested the workers operated in rotating shifts. They also found evidence that the workers were housed and fed quite well for the time, far better than any slave would be. The Sphinx's nose. Believed to have been built well over 4,000 years ago, the Great Sphinx of Giza is one of the iconic images from the Egyptian landscape. Sitting among the pyramids of the Giza Plateau, this ancient sculpture was carved out of limestone and depicts a part lion, part human creature. In fact, next to the pyramids, we bet the Sphinx is the most widely recognized symbol of ancient Egypt. Of all the Sphinx's features, perhaps the one that stands out the most is its lack of nose. No, it wasn't designed that way. For decades, there have been an assortment of rumors as to what happened to this man-cat sniffer. Some blame pollution for eroding the feature over time. Others say that Napoleon shot the nose off with a cannonball. However, sketches made well before Napoleon's time show the nose was missing. Perhaps the best explanation comes from an Egyptian historian who recorded that the nose was removed as an act of vandalism. Back in the 14th century, a man named Saim al-Dar reportedly became outraged by the devotion locals showed to the Sphinx. As a result, he deliberately damaged the face, which destroyed the nose. It was an act he was later executed for. Yikes. Medically advanced. We don't usually think of ancient civilizations as being medically advanced. After all, people passed away from all sorts of strange diseases, and many of the medical practices we do hear about often sound truly bizarre. After all, take a look at this ancient Egyptian image and we think you'll see what we mean. Yet, it may surprise you that the ancient Egyptians were fairly advanced and pretty innovative when it came to medicine. For instance, doctors specialized in certain parts of the body and understood the importance of cleanliness in maintaining health. They knew how to stitch and bandage wounds and how to set a broken leg. They didn't fully understand the circulatory system, but they knew that massages help make people feel better and heal faster. Unfortunately, when it came to disease, they were less knowledgeable. To the ancient Egyptians, disease was brought on by the gods or evil and was dealt with by a doctor who specialized in magic. Needless to say, if you got a disease in ancient Egypt, the odds were not in your favor. That said, Egyptian doctors and medicine would continue to lead the world until the 1300s, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. Makeup. Obsession with appearance has been around as long as humans, and it definitely existed in ancient Egypt. Look at any ancient drawings or depiction of the people and you'll notice that both men and women wore colorful makeup. Now, we get women wearing makeup, but the men? It was all for practical reasons, apparently. Yes, makeup served a purpose other than making your facial features stand out. Lead-based black eye makeup provided protection from the sun and allegedly even helped to prevent eye infections. Also, using lead likely had some bad side effects. Other makeup ground from various ores were thought to ward off flies and protect the skin from the burning effects of the sun. Spiritually, makeup was seen as a way to protect your eyes from evil while also providing you with healing powers. That may also explain why makeup was applied in such a way to make the wearer's eyes look almost feline. After all, the cat was seen as a powerful creature in ancient Egypt. High heels. Since we've mentioned makeup and fashion, it makes good sense to look at another related item from ancient Egypt. Today, we associate high heels with women, formal wear, and important events. Women wear them to look taller, make their legs look longer, and finish off an outfit in style. The ancient Egyptians had a different use for this footwear. Thanks to carvings and murals, we know that high-heeled shoes were worn at least 5,000 years ago. But Egyptians weren't putting them on for a night out on the town. Instead, heeled footwear had a social meaning. If you were upper class, then you wore something on your feet. This was especially true at any ceremonial functions. Everyone else simply walked around in bare feet. There was also one group who needed this special footwear. Butchers, while not of the highest class, also resorted to wearing these shoes for very practical reasons. It turns out that heels allowed them to keep their feet out of all the blood and animal parts that built up while they worked. We think that's a pretty good reason. Time for our ancient Egyptian quiz. The Great Pyramid of Giza is believed to have taken 20 years to build. Towering over all other pyramids, do you know how tall this ancient structure is? Is it A, 315 feet, B, 393 feet, or C, 455 feet? We'll give you the right answer after these following facts. Fly traps. Across the planet, one thing pretty much everyone can agree upon is that flies are annoying. They buzz around us, land on our food, and make us itchy when they land on our arms or face. Yup, flies are gross. This isn't a modern-day problem, however. These pesky little flying insects have been bothering people since the beginning of time, and especially during the age of the Pharaohs. Today, we have screens, bug zappers, and fly strips. They had no such things in ancient Egypt. Well, that's not entirely true. You see, there are records that indicate the wealthy did employ a living fly trap to help keep the flies away from them. If you're having trouble picturing what that would look like, let us describe it to you. Pharaoh Pepi II was annoyed by flies so much, he used slaves to help control them. Instead of giving them ancient fly swatters, Pepi would cover his slaves in honey and always made sure they stood nearby. As a result, the flies would land on the sweet honey-covered slaves instead of the pharaoh. It gives a whole new meaning to the term honey trap. Board games. We bet if we asked you what ancient Egyptians did in a typical day, you wouldn't really know. Sure, there was pyramid building, mummy making, and someone had to cover the slaves in honey. Yet, what else did they do with their time? Archaeologists have discovered that board games were an extremely popular pastime for a society that loved to gamble. Looking at ancient paintings, you can even find images of Egyptians playing a variety of board games. The most popular of these was called Senet. Using a board with 30 squares, players would move their pieces around after throwing bones or colored sticks, similar to modern-day dice. Senet was so popular that pharaohs were buried with game boards, as it was believed that they would play in the afterlife. Back in the world of the living, Senet proved so popular and endured for so many years that it actually influenced the development of modern-day backgammon. Of course, there were other games as well. Ancient versions of checkers and Go were known favorites, as well as a Risk-like game where you captured your opponent's units. Strangely enough, there's no evidence of a Monopoly-like game, but we'll keep looking. Equality. Today, issues concerning equality between men and women remain a hot topic for everyone from the regular Joe to the politician in Washington. Despite having made great advances in the last several decades, more work needs to be done to resolve issues like unequal pay and opportunity. Surely if things remain unresolved today, then ancient Egypt must have been pretty bad when it came to equality, right? Not so much. Sure, when it came to positions of power and certain jobs like king, generals, and politics, the men ruled the roost. However, when it came to laws and finances, women had incredible powers. Property was not handed down from father to son, but mother to daughter. Women had the power to do what they wanted with their property, sign legal contracts, and live without being supervised by a male guardian. Women could also hold a job, control their own money, and divorce if they so desired. Of course, there was one requirement for all of this. This equality between men and women only really occurred in the highest class of society. What a smile! It's part of everyone's daily routine. We hope you do it after you wake up and before you go to bed. Of course, we're talking about brushing your teeth. We often take for granted how simple it is to put a little toothpaste on a brush and spend a minute or two cleaning our chompers. Incredibly, while most people likely think brushing your teeth is a relatively modern idea, the practice goes all the way back to the ancient Egyptians. In a strange way, the Egyptians first invented toothpaste around 5000 BC. Rather than soaps and fluoride, their paste was made from such odd ingredients as ground-up ox hooves, ashes, and eggshells. We bet it didn't taste as good as today's Colgate or Crest. Around 3000 BC, they discovered that the frayed ends of twigs and branches from certain trees made really good brushes. Put the twigs and paste together and you have the ancient forerunner of today's dental hygiene. Unfortunately, Egyptians had to make do with brushing their teeth with sticks because it wouldn't be for another 4,000 years that the bristle toothbrush was invented. Cleopatra the 7th. Other than King Tut, the most famous ancient Egyptian of all time is surely Cleopatra. Yet the Cleopatra you and I were taught about and shown in the movies is one giant lie. That's right, it turns out the real Cleopatra was a lot different than the Hollywood-driven version we've all been shown. First, her family lineage was Greek. That's right, Cleopatra was a descendant of Ptolemy, one of Alexander the Great's generals. Second, she looked nothing like what we think she did. We're all used to Elizabeth Taylor-style Cleopatra. In reality, this ancient Egyptian didn't have movie star looks. In fact, she didn't have long braided hair with bangs. In reality, Cleopatra's head was either shaved and covered with a wig or sported much shorter hair than we have been led to believe. There have been numerous visual reconstructions of this ruler, and none of them end up looking close to the glamorous Hollywood version. Finally, it has long been believed that Cleopatra ended her life because she couldn't handle the passing of Mark Antony. Some think in actuality it was the fear of potentially being dragged through the street of Rome in chains that led the Egyptian ruler to take her own life. Do you know the answer to just how high the Great Pyramid of Giza is? Your choices were A. 315 feet, B. 393 feet, or C. 455 feet. And the answer is C. 455 feet. In fact, it is believed the pyramid was originally more than 480 feet tall. Over time, the removal of stones and erosion have reduced its overall height. To put it all in perspective, the iconic U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. is just 288 feet high. Wow! Before we become history, we'd just like to point out we've got a bunch of other videos that may interest you. Whether it's ancient backgrounds or civilizations from the past, TheRichest is your connection to all things historic. Leave a historical record that you were here and be sure to click that red subscribe button before you head out. We'll see you around. Bye for now.